what's going on, everybody? Today we are going to be talking about Mogis, God of Slaughter. We are super pumped. This was requested on our Instagram, and it took us a while to build it. Not going to shy away from that. It was a pretty difficult build to make it work well, to make it work efficiently, to make sure that you could play this in a four-man pod and actually do some damage with it and win. And we have tested it and done that. So let's jump right on into it. We can see it's a pricey boy. It's about $895 without the basic lands. It's about $890. We can see that our salt score is right up there at the peak, which means people are not going to like playing this deck. But, if you enjoy it, I guess you go after it. My play group seems to enjoy it, seems to appreciate it a little bit. Let's turn this on to TCG Player. Let's see what that is. So that is going to be the Card Kingdom price. TCG Player puts it at $1,001.96, which is usually the opposite way, but, it happens. All right, so let's get on into this. We're going to first talk about Mogis. Let's press the right buttons here. So as we can see, we have Mogis, God of Slaughter, indestructible. As long as your devotion to black and red is less than 7, Mogis isn't a creature. He really doesn't become a creature too often. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, Mogis deals 2 damage to that player unless he or she sacrifices a creature. I enjoy asking, are you going to take 2? Rather than with the Smothering Tithe, are you going to pay 2? We get to ask, are you going to take 2? It's a pretty fun time. There really isn't a lot of printings. There is a Secret Lair. There is the Born of the Gods and the Born of the Gods. So, pretty unusual for that. Usually we have some commanders that have a fair amount of printings there. Let's zoom this back out real quick. All right, let's move on to our artifacts. All right, as we see here, move it into the artifacts. Of course, we have Arcane Signet. Again, people say it's an auto include. I don't necessarily think that, but hey, who am I to say? I did put Collector's Vault in there. I do think this is an overlooked uncommon from Wilds of Eldraine. Pay 2, draw a card, discard a card, create a treasure token. I can't really ask for much more than that. We do have the Jet Medallion. Mind Crank, because when people stop sacrificing their creatures, we want them to get rid of their library, so it's pretty hilarious. It also says whenever a player loses life, and damage causes loss of life. So when they're going to combat and they're swinging at each other, they're going to keep milling. We have this one here. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. I have on multiple occasions, and I have no idea how to do it. But we all know that this is a very good card. Put an influence counter on it and scry 2. Then target opponent may have you draw a card. If that player doesn't, you mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters. And that player loses life equal to the total mana value of those cards. Usually, you get the card draw out of this because you get to scry 2, and people don't want to lose that life. We have a Ruby Medallion, a Soul Ring, Talisman of Indulgence, the Throne of Eldraine, which we use for red. I made the mistake the other day, even though I won the game, and I used this to create black, and we're going to see why that's a mistake later on here. It's not a lot of mono black stuff to really cast. A lot of it is mixed or red because we're going to be trying to burn people. Wayfarer's Bauble, of course. And now we're going to move on into our creatures. All right, first things first, we have Braids. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, an enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. It's a pinger. Very good pinger. It was really hyped when Dominaria United came out. It's still good. I just don't think it's as good as everyone put it out to be. Brash Taunter absolutely phenomenal. If you're not familiar with this card, it is awesome. It's got indestructible. It costs 5 to get out, and it costs 3 to activate his ability. However, I normally make one of my bigger creatures, make him fight one of my bigger creatures, and then just throw that damage off into someone's face. I don't make him fight other people's creatures unless they're bigger than mine. It is awesome. Cemetery Gatekeeper is actually a very interesting card in this. So, Cemetery Gatekeeper says, when it enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Whenever a player plays a land or casts a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, Cemetery Gatekeeper deals 2 damage to that player. So that includes yourself. So you got to be a little careful with it, right? You got to be smart. And you don't want to say, well, I'm going to name instants and sorceries and then cast a bunch of instant and sorceries. But if you're playing against somebody who has a creature deck, you can say creatures and be relatively safe in this. There are creatures. Obviously, we're looking at them. However, there is that opportunity that you could deal more damage to them than you're going to do to yourself. So if you're just smart about what choice you make there, very good card in here. Creeping Bloodsucker, overlooked common, not uncommon, but overlooked common from the Jumpstart 2022. At the beginning of your upkeep, Creeping Bloodsucker deals 1 damage to each opponent. You gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. That's just easy money. Easy money for us. So, I mean, it's a $3 common. I'm sure they're going to reprint it somehow, some way, but it's pretty dang good. This is a relatively new one. I don't really ever cast it. I was just trying to kind of experiment with it. But as I was saying, I don't really ever cast it for its adventure side. I usually just use this to kind of swing in, 4/4 flyer for 4 and creates a treasure token. So you usually get a couple treasure tokens out of him. And he does well. The other side of that is excellent, but, it's just one of those things where I don't really ever use that other side. I probably should, but I don't. Defiler of Instinct. Yep. I'm going to throw this in there just because of this bottom piece here that says whenever you cast a red permanent spell, Defiler of Instinct deals 1 damage to any target. So again, we're starting to ping people. Are we catching the drift here? Because here's another one. Electrostatic Wall. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Fate Unraveler. Whenever an opponent draws a card, deals 1 damage. Fury. Deal 4 damage. Gimli. Counter of Kills. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This card is nutso sometimes. Sometimes it's just 8 life and you gain 8 life. But it's a good trade-off. Gary has done well in here. Great Unclean One from the Warhammer 40k decks. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 2 life for nothing. It just happens. Then, for each opponent who has less life than you, create a 1/3 black demon creature token named Plague Bearer of Nurgle. So, 2 of the best things happen with this card. A, everyone's just losing 2 life for whatever reason. Because it's out on the board. I guess that's the reason. 2, you get to create a token named the Plague Bearer of Nurgle. If you don't want to do that while you're playing Magic the Gathering, well, then I don't know if we can play together. Of course, we have Gutter Snipe and Keverek the Merciless. So everything that we do, we're going to punish our opponents. Everything that they do, we're going to punish our opponents. We have Kardur, Doom Scourge. Whenever an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Whenever an attacking creature, that is not an opponent's attacking creature, it's an attacking creature. So if we're towards the end of the game, we can throw some quick hits in there. They have a choice to block it, and if they kill our stuff, they're taking one, we're gaining one. Also, when he enters the battlefield, all of your opponent's creatures are basically goaded until your next turn, which is very nice. We got the expensive Cataract Parasite in here because we're going to always control our commander, and we're going to make sure that when they draw cards and we control a red permanent, they lose life. We have Massacre Worm, so whenever a creature an opponent control dies, each player loses 2 life. Plus it comes in, acts as a mini board wipe, good for us. We have Neheb in here simply because we can use him as a swinger. We also get to add some red mana, which is nice. Mogis kind of starts that off if need be. Well, I guess it's our post combat, but we have other things like Fate Unraveler and Cataract Parasite. You know, different things like that that are going to make our opponents lose life while it's their turn and our turn. All sorts of different things. So we'll add some red mana. That's not really the big draw here. Really, it's the Afflict 3. We want to be swinging in with some things. Unless we get our multipliers out, pinging everybody for 2 damage is going to take 20 turns. And the last time I played a commander game that lasted 20 turns, I was essentially at the point of just ending it just to end it, because it's too many turns. So, Neheb the Eternal, we want to be swinging in, and when they block, we want them to lose 3 life. So even if we do get to that point where he's going to die, they're still going to lose 3 life, which is what we're trying to do. Orcish Bowmasters, of course you have to throw this one in there with the flash. Especially if you're playing opponents that like to draw a lot of cards. Plus, it gives you a body to kind of throw in front of their blocker or their attackers, because once people realize what you're starting to do and there's not a ton of creatures coming out on your side of the board, they're going to start swinging in, and that's when it becomes a little bit of an issue that Mogis isn't a creature. But as long as we do our thing faster, we're okay. And then we have Sulfum. The Dominus Cycle from Phyrexia, All Will Be One, has been nothing but awesome in every deck that I put it in. Whether it's Mondrak, Zopandrel, Sulfum. The only one I haven't played with is the blue one, and that's because I don't do a lot of proliferating. One person in our play group does a lot of that, and I recommended that card to him, and I'm sure it's just going to make that deck just go crazy. But this bad boy right here, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage. So here we go. We're already multiplying. That means Cataract Parasite does 2. Fate Unraveler does 2. Gutter Snipe does 2. Electrostatic Field does 2. Just all sorts of different things. So, very good, but you do have to kind of be careful, because if it says loses 1 life, it doesn't double that. So there's some things it doesn't work on. There's some things it does. You just got to kind of pay attention to the keywords there. Of course, we're going to throw in Torwaki the Younger, because, again, it's not a multiplier, it's an adder. We're going to add +1, and whenever we cast instant or sorceries, we're going to end up dealing 2 damage to any target. Hopefully it's somebody's face. And with our last one, Sulfum, we'll make that 4 damage for every instant and sorcery. We have Urabrask from March of the Machine. Again, the Praetor series just has been awesome in that. This one, you deal 1 damage and add a red. If you flip him over, he's a pseudo board wipe. Excellent, excellent card. And then, of course, we have Vile Smasher the Fierce. This was an old school commander. I drove about 45 minutes where I live to go get one of these, and it has paid off extremely well. We got them at a good deal. We always try and get everything at a good deal. But, holy cow. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, it deals damage equal to that spell's converted mana cost. I mean, think about it. If you have this guy out, Mogis out, and let's say Torwaki out, you're just, I mean, if they don't take the damage from Mogis, you're going to cast an instant or sorcery. As you're going to see, we have a bunch of those to go search your deck, to go do whatever, just to even ping something. And next thing you know, you're going to be dealing 6 damage to someone because of the mana cost, Torwaki, and multipliers. I mean, it's just, it gets nutso. I hope you like doing math if you're going to build this deck, because you're definitely going to need to do some math. So let's jump on into the enchantments and see where more of that math comes from. All right. So first things first, March of the Machine. Again, we got Convoke on our enchantment here, City on Fire. Convoke really works awesome because you do have some creatures that are going to be coming out that you can tap, and you don't really need them to attack unless we're in a really hard spot. We're mostly using their abilities to ping people. So tapping them down to cast this doesn't make a difference. However, triple the damage. So far we have Sulfum that'll double. And now we have City on Fire that will triple. Now, again, you have to be careful with this. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. So, that's not to opponents. It is to everyone. That means your signets that you're going to tap, they're going to cost you 3 life to tap them. Any pain lands are going to cost you 3 life to tap them. It gets a little bit tricky in there to make sure that we are making an effort to watch what we're doing, because some of this stuff can come back on us and really hit us in the face. Of course, we have Fiery Emancipation, recently reprinted on the Enchanting Tales sheet. This is my personal favorite artwork of it, so that's why I use this one. Again, it's another tripler. And again, you have to watch this because it says to a permanent or player. So it has to be a source we control, so we're hoping that most of that is going towards our opponents. But again, those pain lands and those signets can end up coming up to cost us dearly in the end. We went a little mean and we oublieted a few people here. This is a great way to make people hate this deck because it phases the creature out. It does not exile them or move them to a different zone. So under my best understanding of the rules, there is no choice with this. You cannot put your commander back into the command zone. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, but that is my understanding of the rule, that if I cast this on your commander, you no longer have a commander. I tend to not do that to people's commanders simply because we want to make sure people are having fun while we're playing, and they allow us to keep playing this deck, or at least want to come back and try and play this deck again, see if they can beat us to that punch. We have Repercussion. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to that creature's controller. Of course, we want our other people swinging, so we could add some goad aspects into this, but we didn't do that for this time around. We really wanted to go straightforward to just, we're going to punch you square in the face, and Mogis is going to laugh about it. Underworld Dreams. Whenever an opponent draws a card, 1 damage to that player. Awesome. Wound Reflection is actually a recent update to this deck. It works well. Works fantastic, actually. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. Damage causes loss of life. It is important that that is on there because people will argue that. However, if we can hit them for 6, and then at their end step, they lose another 6, we're doing pretty good. So now we're going to get into our instance. All right, here we are. We're going to start this off with Baleful Mastery. This is one of my favorites. If I got the mana, I pay the 4. If I don't, I have some quick removal right at the beginning of the game, and we get to exile. I prefer exile over destroy. I don't like people getting things back, especially if I'm playing like a Moldrathra deck. Wow. Try saying that word, huh? Also, if we read this, it just says an opponent draws a card. It doesn't say the opponent that you did this to. Now, I haven't looked up the ruling to that, but to me, reading that card means I can give somebody else a card draw and still get rid of your creature. So, if I'm wrong in that, go ahead and comment down below, but that's that's how we play it in our play group. Next one up is Big Score. Just a card draw. Draw 2, create 2 treasure tokens, and you discard a card. If you really look at this, it's 1 in a red because you're getting 2 treasures back, and you're getting 2 cards. So you're essentially paying 2 and a card to get 2 cards and two treasures. It's pretty good. If you look down there again, this is a common that is well over that dollar mark, unless we look at the TCG player, which is that little green lightning bolt. Then we're looking at $1.47, still pretty expensive for a common. Of course, we have Chaos Warp. Why not? We're playing red. I wish I could be more inventive, but this is what we play. Deadly Dispute, one of my favorite cards to have ever come out. It is slowly but surely gaining its value back. As we can see here, it is $3.46. Excuse me. And $3.99 on Card Kingdom. So, and then of course, we went a little bit heavy-handed on these. We got Deadly Rollick. It's a free spell. Hopefully, we're controlling our commander almost the entire game. He's going to be pretty hard to get rid of because he's an enchantment. Unless you meet that devotion mark, then those creature removal spells work on him, but he is still indestructible, so we don't have to worry about Blasphemous Acts or anything like that. We really just have to worry about Swords to Plowshares, Baleful Masteries, things that exile creatures. We have Deflecting Swat, because people are going to try and get rid of your stuff. We also have Dismember, so that way we can pay life and, again, get rid of some of those threats at the beginning of the game. Or we just wait and we say, okay, here is, we have enough mana to cast this for its regular cost. Feign Death. There's a couple creatures that I don't want dying in here. So we play this kind of as that Rakdos scam in Standard. We could always evoke Fury, and then before that hits, Feign Death, and then Fury comes back with a +1/+1 counter. So now you've cast Fury for exiling a red card, all that good stuff. Imp's Mischief. Change the target of spell with a single target. You lose life. It's just it's a black, cheap deflecting swat. So, same-ish thing there. Infernal Grasp, always a great card. Destroy target creature. You lose 2 life. Pretty good. Malakir Rebirth has always been good since it's come out. Basically the same thing as Feign Death, except for if we're really struggling for lands, we could always flip it over and put that land on it. We have Terminate. Valakut Awakening for card draw. Vampiric Tutor, let's go search some stuff out. And then we're going to get into the mana base. Alright, so let's talk about mana. I say this on every single deck tech that I do. You can make a better mana base than I can. Go ahead and do it. I don't play with super crazy mana bases. I do play casual. We don't really try and have infinite combos in our play group. We kind of stray away from those. So, of course, there are updates that you might be sitting there saying, oh, man, this would be so much better with this or this. Yes, I'm aware. I'm aware that I could add in a demonic tutor. I could add in a few different things inside here that would change this up dramatically and make it excellent. I leave that to you guys, so that way you can kind of build this to the level of your play group and kind of just lead you in the correct direction of where I think you should go. Doesn't mean it's correct, but this has been successful for me. Alright, so first we got our Lord of the Rings land here. Comes in untapped. You can also amass orcs if you need to create some bodies to block. Flight Step Pathway. With the flip side, I believe it's Lava Step Pathway. Bajuka Bog, because I love Graveyard Hate. Again, I said it earlier. I don't want people bringing anything back. I don't like killing things twice, so I don't want to have to do it. Command Tower, Fabled Passage, Gemstone Caverns. This one's just good. Start with that luck counter. We have Geothermal Bog, so that way we can go fetch it out. Haunted Ridge. Leech-Ridden Swamp. If we look at this activated ability down here, each opponent loses 1 life. Activate only if you control 2 or more black permanents. So, pretty easy to get there. Luxury Suite. Marsh Flats. Mines of Moria. Again, we can use that activated ability. We can have it come in untapped if we control a legendary. Mount Doom. Another Pain Land. However, it also acts as a artificial board wipe. So, sacrifice Mount Doom and a legendary artifact. Choose up to 2 creatures and destroy the rest. Activate only as a sorcery. So, it can work out. Basic Mountains. Plaza of Heroes. If we ever do get Mogis up to that 7 and someone starts to target Mogis, we have kind of a relief valve right here. Scalding Tarn, another fetch land. Smoldering Marsh. Sozinkan. Sulphurous Mire. Sulphur Springs. Basic Swamps. Takanuma. And War Room. So, you pay 3, pay 2 life, and you can draw a card. So, now we'll get into the sorceries. Alright, so, everyone knows this one. Beseech the Mirror. It's one of those big ones, right? I had this in my starting hand in the game the other day that I won with Mogis. And I also had Throne of Eldraine. So I figured I'd get Throne of Eldraine out. Say black. Cast Beseech the Mirror. Sacrifice an artifact. Bargain it. And then get something out real quick. I did all of that. But then my Throne of Eldraine essentially became a whole lot of useless for the mana side. I did get to draw cards with it. Which is nice. But if you're going to play that Throne of Eldraine, I would recommend red. We have Brotherhood's End, which is really nice, dealing 3 damage. Now, if you have a multiplier out, this can do 6 damage. It can do 9 damage. It can do 27 damage. It can do a whole lot of damage with your multipliers out. We have Cut Ribbons. I usually use this as a discard card. I do use the cut side sometimes. However, the ribbon side says each opponent loses X life, and it's X a black and a black. Yeah. There was another game that night that I played that I was looking for an answer, and then we got done. I had lost by just a couple life, and I looked at my graveyard, and I said, oh my goodness, I forgot this was in here, because that has Aftermath on it. So, my fault, but very good to have in your graveyard. Damnation, Demonic Tutor, Exsanguinate. This card is, I believe, again, overlooked. Very good. Each opponent loses X life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. Of course, we're doing what we want. Into the Fire is actually a new card that I've put in here that's relatively inexpensive. Again, we can choose the first option with our multipliers out and have a semi board wipe. You might clear off some battles for some people, so be careful with that. Normally, I use it for the Valakut, where I'm putting any number of cards from my hand on the bottom and then drawing that many plus 1. So, it works pretty good. Jessica's Will, we are all familiar with that. Reckless Handling. A lot of people have laughed at me for having this in my deck. However, it does what I want it to do. If I have my multipliers out, and I end up having to discard whatever artifact I went to go find, that 2 damage can equal a lot of damage. So, it does good. Sign in Blood, Toxic Deluge, and then we're back to Mogis, God of Slaughter. So again, like I've said, everybody, I understand that there could be some updates to this. I understand that we can make this better. You know, we could add in those staple cards, the Mana Crypts, the Jeweled Lotus, the all that kind of stuff. We play at a very low casual level, I believe. It's low. Maybe a little bit higher than what I'm thinking it is. But this sits with my play group. This is just kind of a blueprint, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we're going to be doing another deck tech here. Maybe you saw it on the screen. Maybe you didn't, but we'll just go back to our decks here. And we'll give you a little sneak peek of what we're doing on the next one. And it's going to be this one here, 8 Butt Cheeks. So keep your eye out for that one. And we'll catch you on the next one.